They've acknowledged there's a few too many bugs and concerns from the players with Star Citizen. CIG then have recently discussed their change in direction for the game in terms of development. They're going to be moving away from the quarterly patches providing new ongoing content and instead focusing in on monthly patches. These monthly patches will essentially be mostly about fixing and resolving persistent bugs and quality of life issues. This quite naturally means reassigning various resources within CIG and revising the development process for the game. It's going to be a bit of a long haul by the sounds of it, and there is, after all, a long list of technical challenges that have been plaguing the live game for a very long time at this point. So it seems to me that CIG are saying that 2025 is going to be about improving and fixing Star Citizen in this way as much as possible. So not so much about the new big content releases, but rather about the various different fixes. So let's talk about a few of these different things they've discussed. There's the ongoing login issues at the transit system and elevators. These have been a well-known problem. How many of us have either got lost in the trains, outright ejected from the transit system, or otherwise lost in the lifts and elevators themselves? There's also going to be a look at hangar and ship persistent problems, as well as inventory data persistence, and the mission system is going to get a bit of an overhaul. There's going to be some fixes there, and then of course the quantum drive itself, along with associated graphical issues. So we're going to talk about that for a while, and we'll discuss the ongoing process and resource management, as well as the communications that CIG have been looking into. So, logins. Players have expressed long delays at login. This is something I've seen a lot myself. You can often even get stuck on this. Now, sometimes you're lucky you can get straight in. Other times you'll get into a bit of a queue. And occasionally, it don't matter what happens, you just get stuck at the beginning of the queue once you're down at, well, basically the very low numbers. So the cause for this, CIGSN, appears to be related to the authorization process during matchmaking. Additionally, problems with shard locking, where players remain tied to a shard even when it becomes unresponsive. All of these are now under some examination from CIG, something they're actually looking into. Of more concern, perhaps, is the transit system. Now, like I say, I've lost count of the times that I've gone into the train systems, only to find myself ejected out the back end of the train when the train starts moving. Very similar things happen to the elevators as well. Often, the elevators can deliver you to effectively the middle of nowhere, clipping you straight through the scenery. So yeah, CIG do acknowledge there's a number of problems here, we all know that, and only touched on a few of them. There's also often the missing elevators as well as unresponsive ones as well. So the team are working on both of these, and I think they're looking more towards immediate hot fixes, which might fix some of the problems, but not necessarily all of them. And then longer term, they've got some goals here to ensure that improvements ensure the system ultimately works reliably. Then we come to hangar and ship persistent problems. So the thing here is that there are a variety of hangar related bugs. Everyone has a big personal hangar now in Star Citizen. It's been that way for a little while. Hangars related bugs continue to affect ship storage and spawning. The developers have recounted various different incidents where ships were inadvertently destroyed or failed to appear correctly, generally due to the various different back-end changes, as well as timing issues going on with the servers. And they acknowledge that this not only disrupts gameplay, but also affects the overall player progress. And yeah, this can mean that sometimes you're in the middle of a mission, you've got a very long way made to quite significant progress, only to have your ship completely destroy itself for no reason, or otherwise perhaps not even spawn when you need it to complete an objective or get from A to B. Hardly ideal, and you can see why many players feel this is somewhat game-breaking. Similar problems extend to the inventory and data persistence, so yeah, problems here. Inventory management. This has led to items disappearing unexpectedly, and the current system responsible for tracking purchased, looted or mission-related items is now under review by CIG. Again, they're pursuing a similar idea and approach here to what they have with elevators, issuing some short-term fixes that will hopefully make things a little bit smoother in the meanwhile, and then planning some long-term overhauls that will ultimately ensure the inventory data persists accurately. Elsewhere, in terms of gameplay, there's an incoming mission system overhaul. Now, This doesn't mean new missions or anything like that are on the way. Instead, it's all about the mission management system, and apparently that's not fully compatible with the new server meshing architecture, the new framework that's being used within the game. Now, obviously, I think many of you will be well aware, even those of you who only partially pay attention, that server meshing has long been a thing with Star Citizen, long anticipated. Now, that's been partially deployed now to the servers, but as CIG are pointing out here, it does cause some problems with other areas of the game that are not entirely compatible with it. So they're going to be redesigning the mission scripting tools to make that actually work. So yeah, although it does work at the moment, they want it to be, well, far more compatible, a much more robust experience, if you will. Another area they touched on is quantum travel. That's the faster than light travel, as well as the associated graphical issues. Now, there are some persistent problems here with quantum travel, and these can be things such as fuel state inconsistencies and the occasional ship disappearances. Yeah, I'm sure you can see why that's a problem. That's something that's also going to be looked at then, as are some of the graphical artifacts that are happening when players using Vulkan combined with the latest NVIDIA drivers. All of this is another thing that does need to be looked at. So these are a few of the things that CIG are looking at, and you can see that whilst there's only a handful of issues mentioned here so far in the video, all of these do have a pretty significant impact on the gameplay itself and players' overall experience of it. Many of these are not necessarily quite game-breaking, but, well, they're very annoying to say at the least. So the idea here then is that CIG are going to put a lot more time and effort basically focusing their energy on getting many of these things fixed. And I think it's also important to emphasize that overall it doesn't mean that they're going to be stopping the release of new content. New content is going to come, but it's not going to be releasing directly to the live server, initially at least. It is instead going to be going onto the tech preview. So the tech preview server is somewhat different to the private Evocati server and the PTU, the test realm. What this is all about is testing new features that CIG are planning. So effectively, imagine it as a big giant sandbox. This will be available publicly, but it's only available during certain times when CIG want to test out these new features. So it seems that the tech preview server is all about essentially getting things right and just testing ideas out to see if they actually work. And this all makes sense, right? And I'm sure CIG have been doing this behind the scenes anyway, as do pretty much every single company developer out there, I'm sure, test out features before they're actually deployed into either an alpha or beta state. The difference here is that what's happening is that these features are going to be tested by the public, so that essentially what CIG get is a huge number of players, hopefully, testing these features out to see if they actually break. So it's another change for CIG. Over the years, they've pretty much constantly and repeatedly changed their entire development process. This is something that happens perhaps every year, every couple of years, every 18 months or so. This one's a pretty big one, and yeah, delaying or slowing down the release of the big features in order to get the main game, the main current release, to be more stable and more bug-free, whilst testing out the new features in a bit more of an independent and a solid fashion. A good approach, all in all. And I think regardless of your position on Star Citizen, we can all agree that it definitely needs some stability and bug improvements. So yeah, at least there's that. So that's pretty much where things stand today with the game. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. There is another one on the screen right here if you want to check that out. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll catch you next time.